All right, it looks like we are live. Welcome, everyone who's tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Seven, and tonight, Remy Blumenfeld and I are going to be having a conversation where we go over Remy's 7 secrets that he wants to share with you tonight for creative startups that founders in the space really need to know. To give you some quick background on myself before we get started, I'm a social entrepreneur who's worked on a couple of businesses over the last few years, including one creative business, as well as a podcast for leadership and focusing on mental health. And I've done a little bit of work with Remy as well, so I've gotten to know just how useful and transformational some of his insights are. And tonight, we want to share a little bit of that with you in light of Remy launching his online course for creative founders called Standout. So without further ado, Remy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm really well, and thank you for having me. I tried to put together an ebook called 20 Secrets of Successful Creative Startups, and that felt pretty narrow, but now we're just doing 7 of them, so it's really just focusing on a few. And actually, in my ebook, not one of the secrets I'm going to be talking about tonight, but one of the secrets that I share in my ebook is hire Gen Zs, hire people from Generation Z in any successful business. And you're one of the youngest people I've worked with, but I've learned a lot from you about what Gen Z bring to the table, and it is a different perspective. And I really enjoyed being on your podcast a few weeks ago. And I'm looking forward to what questions you have for me tonight.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it too. That is great for me to hear. I love hearing things like that. I love getting those different insights. And we're going to share some of those tonight, which is going to be really, really exciting. Before we dive into those 7 secrets, Remy, I'd love to ask you, kind of in consideration of everything that's happened in the last 12 to 14 months, do you think that 2021 is a good time to start a new business?
Wow. Well, the short answer is yes. I think it's a great time to start a new business. And maybe I could just spend a few minutes just talking about some of the reasons why. Are you starting a new business this year? Are you actually doing that, Seven?
I kind of am. I'm announcing a new business this year that I kind of started last year. So a little bit, yeah.
So launching a new business now is a great time for a whole number of reasons. I think for many of us, it's because if we've been working for somebody else until now, 2020 and what we've had of 2021 has been a great rehearsal in working for ourselves, because we've all been working at home. So if you were one of those people who thought, I'm not sure I can start a business on my own because it will be so lonely, how will I function working from home? How will I function not having a big team? If you're one of those people who've been thinking, I need the structure and the bigness of a company to work for. I need to rely on a corporation to support me. I need that kind of dependability that working for somebody else provides. Then you too will have discovered that there is no such thing as certainty, right? That you may have been working for a big company, but that company may have gone bust or laid people off or whatever it is. So those are some reasons why we're already sort of working for ourselves, even if we didn't really know it, even if possibly somebody has been picking up the paycheck until now. So we've kind of flexed that entrepreneurial muscle, most of us, just by default. And I think the other thing, and then there are some reasons which are just simply to do with the pandemic. So there's never been so many good people available to hire to work on projects, whether it's freelance or full-time, because so many people have been laid off by the pandemic and the things around it. There's a great resource of brilliant people. And secondly, it may seem weird, but actually a lot of your competition has been wiped out. Now, it may not be exactly in what you're doing, because I'm sure you have a unique offer, but people in the space that you're in may not be in that space anymore because they were set up to thrive in a pre-pandemic era, which is to say they probably had fixed overhead, right? Offices that they had to pay for, which they couldn't afford. Probably quite some of them big numbers of staff that they had to pay. And so they may have gone out of business. And that basically brings me to my next point, which is that you, if you're starting a business in 2021, can create a business that is perfect for the opportunities that exist right now and that suits you and who you are and where you're at and your values right now, and that can connect with communities and people and your clients in a different way. Because there's no business that was created 5 years ago that is able to be as reactive and as suited to the environment we find ourselves in as a business that's starting now. If you're starting in 2021, you will have low fixed overhead, you will have small or no office, you will have a small team that works for now, and you'll create something that actually speaks to who you are and where you're at right in this moment. And when we do that, we always resonate with other people, because you may think I'm only doing something that I love, but when you do something you love, that you want, that you need, you'll find that there's millions of other people who are exactly in that same position as you are right now, and they weren't in that position 2 years ago. So those are just some of the many reasons why now is a great time to start a new business.
I love that. People will really feel that. I feel like I might be hearing myself. I might be hearing myself on your side, Remy. A little bit of feedback might be coming. Oh, there we go. It's all done. Had a little bit of an issue there. Sorry to anyone who might have heard that. Anyway, we are all good now. Something I really find interesting within that, a really interesting statistic I heard within the fashion industry, which might relate to a couple of the creatives who might be watching this tonight, is that something like 40% of the industry, 40% of your competition was wiped out. And that is a huge number. So when I hear you saying stuff like that, that is so encouraging, despite numbers like that, which sound very scary, that is, that's really motivating to me personally. And I think it really nicely leads us on to our first question, our first of the 7 secrets that I want to ask you about, which is around kind of setting clear goals, right? You've written and spoken a lot about the importance of having clear, measurable goals. And you just mentioned what it's like when you've got them and you're working towards them, right? So clearly they're interwoven through so much of what you're used to and what you talk about. When you first meet with a new client, how do you set about working with them on their goals?
Well, I basically get them to define their goals. And obviously the most important area for most people is career, finances, work, their professional endeavor and their professional sphere. So we generally start in that area. And if we look at that area and how we define goals in that one area, perhaps it will be clear how we then extend that to define goals in many different areas of your life.
Yeah, so sounds good.
So I think success can very often look to each of us like what other people would think success was. We grow up with ideas of what success is, and then that idea is reinforced by society, by the media, by social media, by our friends. And sometimes we lose sight of what success would actually look like to us personally, if there was no one else involved to judge and assess. And so I always ask clients to engage with who they are. And often we go to the place of their future self, so themselves in 20 or 30 years, and have a conversation with, Seven, age 50, or, Remy, age 80, about what success really looks like. Because, it's a fact that when we reach the end of our lives as human beings, we share certain regrets. And those regrets are around having spent too much time away from home, at the office, not having been true to our purpose, not having been true to what really brought us joy, working too hard to please other people. These are common regrets as human beings. So I get my clients to define what would be real success for them. And we generally start with just in the next year. So what would success look like for you at work? And I get clients to define that in a very granular way. So not just have more money, have more success, be more famous. Nothing like that, which is so vague and unattainable, because how do you ever know when you have enough, or even if you have more? No, I get them to say, how much, in what area, by when. So everything has a quantifiable number with a date attached. So instead of saying, I want to write a book by the end of the year, which is something one of my clients said recently, I'll say, well, how many chapters do you want to have written by the end of the month? How many chapters do you want to have written by the end of 6 months? When do you want to have delivered your first draft to your agent? And so we make it much more granular in terms of how many pages, how many chapters, and by which month. And I think it really helps when you look at the year ahead to see a roadmap, because in a way, what defining success for you turns into is a roadmap of how to get there. Because if you want to have written a book by the end of the year, then how many chapters do you need to have written by the end of June? And when do you need to have the artwork done, and so on and so forth? So I get them it becomes much more granular. So under each thing, the heading might be launch a company that connects with Gen Z. But then I put the date of when the launch is, and then backwards from that. So what do you need to do to achieve that? Who do you need to hire? Who do you need to approach? What do you need to achieve? So there's always a how much, by when, and it becomes quite granular. But once we've done that in the area of career and finances, I extend that to the other areas of people's lives, because I think we often forget that, there is this important thing called balance. And unless we feel there is a balance in our lives between health and fitness, between fun, travel and adventure, between relationships with our family and friends, and intimate relationships with our partners, unless we start realizing that all of these things need to coexist alongside career and finances, we end up in a sort of vacuum of unhappiness where, yes, I've written the book, yes, I've delivered it to my agent, but I haven't been to the gym, I haven't spoken to my family, I haven't gone on any intimate dates with my partner. And so we don't necessarily feel as good as we thought we would feel when we achieved the big goals that we set ourselves. So I look at goals in every area of life. And if you go to vitality.guru, there's no .com or anything, it's just vitality.guru, you'll find the Wheel of Life exercise, which you can do online yourself, just to see how in balance you are right now in all the different areas of your life, from, like I said, health and fitness to fun, travel and adventure. It's a quite useful exercise to do.
You know why that really speaks to me is because when I first hear you say, I want to write a book by the end of the year, as an example, to me initially, that does sound fairly specific. But then when you break down the fact that your work is just one little segment of your life, and even then you've got milestones you need to reach, you realize just how not specific it is, and therefore it's much harder to attain. You can get lost in different directions and all kinds of things. And as a founder, I think that is such a key piece of advice that kind of keeps you on track with what you want. It sounds
really
like what you
to do stuff. Yeah, because if you set really clear goals for yourself, you'll find once you've committed to them, and I encourage you to kind of commit to them and then write them down and read them to a friend or partner or colleague and put them away, you'll see an amazing number of things on your list get accomplished. But what's equally interesting is that the things you don't commit to and put down on your list don't magically happen by themselves. So in other words, if I put down on my list, I would like to go hiking in Australia for 3 weeks in July, there's a chance that I might do that. And I probably will if I commit to doing it. But if I don't put it down, it hasn't got a chance of happening. So we need to commit to these goals in order for them to happen. I think they also need to all feel a little bit scary. So it's no good just putting things that you know you're going to do anyway. You know, if you know that you're going to go running once a week, don't put go running once a week. Put go running 3 times a week, because it's much more exciting to set goals which you don't quite achieve than it is to set goals which you know you will. And that's particularly true, you know, when it comes to setting a business, setting up a new business. It's really important to have goals which are a little bit scary and a little bit over ambitious and extend you, which you don't quite hit, but you've got much closer to your definition of success than you would have if you don't set those goals.
Yeah, that to me, is advice that I will immediately take on board in my own life already, because even though I've got longer term visions, sometimes setting those milestones is something that we procrastinate a little bit, right? And that kind of, in a way, nicely moves me on to the next question I wanted to ask you, right? So talking about your clients, for you, most of your clients are in film, TV, publishing, and the arts, right? So these creative sectors. And in these creative industries specifically, it's easy to believe that it is all about me as the founder, right? It's all about you as an individual. Now, you talk a little bit about what it means to be attached, and you go over it a decent amount in Standout as well. And I find it really interesting. Is being attached so bad? Is that really such a bad thing?
Well, it's quite unhelpful, okay? Because being attached, the way I define it, is making it about me, okay? So if I'm saying, you know, I'm going to do this video with Seven, and if it's a success by the standards I've set, then I'm a success. And if it's a failure because no one liked it, no one watched it, then I'm a failure, right? That's being attached. It's basically fusing your identity, your sense of self with the outcomes of your projects. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's really a dangerous thing to do. And we'll come to some of the reasons why. But when I work with really successful founders across the creative industries, they share the secret of being committed but not attached. And that is to say, they passionately care about getting a result which they have set out for themselves. You know, to use the example of that guy who said, I'm going to write a book by the end of this year and I'm going to submit it to my agent by November, and so on. So they're committed to it and they care about it, but it's not all about them. There's a separation. The book is the book, and whether they get it done on time has something to do with them, but they're not going to make it mean that they're a success or a failure if the agent doesn't like the book or the publishers don't take the book at the first attempt. Because the thing is, when we're attached to something, it makes it very hard to share with other people in a way that is light and fun and joyous. When we're attached, there's very little freedom around the idea or the project. So, you know, if you're trying to get investment in something that you're doing and you're attached, the other person will know that you've made it all about you. So they can't say, oh, I love this idea, but how about we just shift the audience, or how about we just shift the concept a little bit? How about we do this instead of that? And that can stop people giving input, which could be really valuable to you and actually take the project to the next level. You know, when I'm attached to my book, and the agent says, well, love the book, but don't like the title, I react in a way that is all about me. Like, I've failed. Oh, you hate my title? Well, you hate me, and it's a failure. So it's really important just to keep the idea that you're pitching or the project that you're offering like a ball in the air between you and the other person, rather than something which is fused to you. You know, if you like this idea, if you like this project, if you want to invest in my company, then you like me and you approve of me. And if you want any changes, then you're basically criticizing me and attacking me. That's being attached. So being committed, passionately wanting something to happen and believing in the project, but not attached, is really the best way to be if you're starting a new venture or company in this space. And that's why I do go into it in some detail in one of the modules in Standout, which, by the way, I created simply because I was going through all of these distinctions and continue to go through all of them with my coaching clients in the creative sector. And so Standout is basically a distillation of the 9 pillars of learning, which I found have been vital and essential to the entrepreneurs who I coach one-on-one.
Yeah. See, that's really interesting to me, especially because if so many people are experiencing it, why is it something that's often so difficult for us to come to grips with? I think it's very common for pretty much everyone to conflate who we are with what we do. So when you say, if the book fails, I have failed, in that example, that resonates so strongly because as a founder, it's common to go, well, if our business fails, I have failed, but you are not your business. You can love it and be committed to it and work really hard, but it doesn't mean you have failed if something goes wrong, or that you are a failure if something goes wrong.
100%. And it's because of how we were raised as children. So there's pretty much not a person listening or watching who wasn't shown love and approval by their parents and grandparents and family as a child through doing and having, right? So let's go to the zoo. Let's play a baseball game. Let's play hide and seek. Here's a doll. Here's a toy truck. You know, we were shown love and approval through doing and having. So my very earliest memories of life were, you know, this little potato print that I did, 5 gold stars, or this little story about, you know, Jack and Jill, 5 gold stars. So we're shown approval through what we do and what we have. And then I become this little truck, or I become this little doll, or I am that story that I told the teacher that's now on the wall with 5 gold stars. So we become defined by doing and by having. And that's why the attachment, that's why we all understand this so well. But there's another distinction, which is just being. Like, who are you being? Are you being a leader? Are you being inspiring? Are you being uplifting? Are you being nurturing? You can be those things. And of course, you can't be attached to those. That's who you are. That is who you are. That's not being attached to something. That is fused with who you are and who you're being. And I think leaders in the creative sector, as well as any sector, really are defined by the way that they embody qualities which lead their teams. So not so much by what they've done, but by who they are. And if you can just make that shift to say, I'm a great leader because I'm kind, because I'm caring, because I listen, not because I have, you know, 6 awards on my shelf or whatever it might be.
Yeah. That, to me, I think a really small but really powerful piece of proof that kind of backs up what you've just said is when you started talking there a couple minutes ago and said you can be committed but not attached. Even for me, that felt a little bit freeing, just hearing that on its own. You know, I think that is a powerful message, like you said, really for any industry to take forward. And it's interesting we talk a lot about failure there, because a lot of the time if we're attached, it's because of this frame of mind of, you know, have I failed or have I succeeded? And that kind of moves us on to our next question really nicely. Now, you've written a lot about kind of how our failures can be our stepping stones to success, right? But it can be hard to do what we were just talking about, right? It can be hard not to let those past failures get us down, right? That's just kind of normal human behavior, isn't it?
Well, that brings us to one of my favorite topics, which is the voice in your head, right? Because the person who you most are in conversation with is yourself. And like you said, that voice in your head very often says, 7, you failed 3 times before. Don't do it again. You'll fail again, right? That voice in your head says, don't even try because it didn't work last time. And in coaching, that voice is called the saboteur because it sabotages our attempts to generate and create and transform, and it sabotages creativity. And it does so in evolutionary terms for a very good reason. That voice in your head was there, planted by the great maker of mankind, whoever they were, to prevent us from being eaten by a lion or fall down a crevasse. Like, you know, if you went out on the plain and and your friends and family were eaten by lions, that voice in your head is saying, don't go out onto the savannah because you might get eaten by a lion again. So you learn from past mistakes in that sense, in a way that will perhaps save your life. But these days, it's not about life and death. It's actually about the life and death of projects, of future possibilities. So if you're listening to the voice in your head that's saying, don't try that, you'll look stupid. Don't do that, it will fail. Don't do that, it didn't work last time. It's stopping you from actually doing anything exciting and new. And it's keeping you in a very safe space, which, no, you won't get eaten by a lion, but nor will you start a new company or a new venture or a new project because you don't want to fail. And I really encourage you and all my clients to look at failure as a necessary thing, right? Failure is learning. Failure is learning from mistakes. Failure is an opportunity to grow and do things differently next time. Every failure that I've had makes me stronger. Every failure, every mistake has taught me so much more than successes. So the quote there that you shared, like all our failures are stepping stones to success, actually comes from Arianna Huffington, the founder of the Huffington Post and now Thrive Global, one of America's most successful media figures. But you know, she sent her book out to 40 publishers, and then wrote another book and sent it out to 40 publishers, and no one published it. You know, she ran for Congress and got 0.5% of the vote before she launched Huffington Post. So most, if not every, really successful entrepreneur in any space will tell you that they failed multiple times before they succeeded. And then they failed multiple times again before they succeeded again. And if you stop every time you fail, you don't grow, you don't get to try and play a game, you're basically stuck. So I encourage you to celebrate failure. Like, do something really fun and silly, and whatever works for you. It doesn't have to be silly. For me, it has to be silly. Do something to celebrate when you fail, to mark it, to grow from it. Don't be embarrassed by it. And whatever you do, don't hide it, because failure, like in my course, Stand Out, a lot of what I'm sharing is things I did wrong, mistakes I made that I probably, it probably cost me a lot of money and time. But actually, I'm really keen that other people can learn from my mistakes. And so many people can learn from your mistakes too. And when you share your mistakes, it makes you seem much stronger, much more like a leader, much more capable. When you hide your mistakes, pretend they didn't happen, it makes you feel weaker, more exposed. Yeah. So it's sort of the opposite of what we're programmed to think. We're programmed to think that if I share my failures with you, you'll think I am a failure. But actually, if I share my failures with you, you'll recognize my strength, because it takes real strength to share failure and learn from it.
Yeah, and to come back afterwards, it's this kind of strength and vulnerability, right? And it sounds like what you're...
I mean, it isn't actually one of my secrets of successful founders, but perhaps it should be, because, sharing your vulnerability and being vulnerable makes you a strong leader, and makes you somebody who people gravitate towards and feel comfortable with and can share with, and are not afraid to fail with. Because I think the most successful creative teams are teams where people feel it's safe to fail. Because, in the creative industries, a typical career sounds like this, right? No, 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 no. No, 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 yes, no, 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 no. So there's very few yeses for all the no's. And if you let the no's get you down, and you won't ever experiment. You have to have a lot of no's. You have to have a lot of failed attempts and wrong ideas and mistakes that don't quite hit the mark in order to get the bullseye, in order to hit the bullseye and have a success. So it's really important to embrace, celebrate failure and share it and learn from it, and not hide it or be ashamed of it.
Yeah. See, I love that because it very clearly takes us on to, for me, what is one of the most interesting questions I kind of wanted to ask you tonight. And I love you've already started essentially talking about it, which is you as a leader, right? All about you as the person who's at the helm of things. And you talked a second ago about how being able to create a team this way and be vulnerable this way makes you a strong entrepreneur, a strong leader. Now, I myself, as someone who's tried to, has started a couple of businesses, I know it's easy to get sucked into being, or I should say, having this concept of I am the leader, I'm at the forefront. What that's ended up meaning for me and other founders that I've met, and I know people that you've worked with before as well, is that we try to do everything ourselves, right? We get sucked into, I must be doing everything myself to set it to my standard. But what you tend to say is that this isn't productive, right? How come? Why is it that this isn't so productive? And what can founders of especially younger, newer companies do to avoid making that kind of mistake?
Well, I think it just starts with a very simple thing, which is that each of us has a superpower strength. Each of us has one thing, possibly two, that we're really good at. It's just what we do really well. Okay. What would you say yours was? If you had to define one thing that you're really good at in the business, if you coming to a new business or coming to someone else's business, or even when you're thinking about what you bring to your own business, there are certain things that you just know that you do well and you love doing them. You love being that person, and that's your superpower strength. So what might it be for you?
For me, I would really say it's bringing together a team, listening to them, and working together, right? Creating that kind of culture and being a leader over others in that way to create the work, if that kind of makes sense.
Great, completely. So you're like the glue. You're like the magnet that attracts. Maybe you're a magnet for creative teams, and being a magnet for creative people is enough of a superpower strength. You don't need to justify yourself by having any other skills or abilities. We're often assessed by other people in terms of, what we can't do, as though each of us was meant to be an all-rounder in everything. We're not at school anymore, so you don't have to be good at geography, physics, history, math, science. You don't have to be. If you have one superpower strength, say it's being a communicator, or say it's being a facilitator, or say it's being the magnet for creative people, that's enough. There will be other people on your team, in your periphery, in your life, out there, waiting for the opportunity to be the organizer, or to be the administrator, or to be any of the things that you're not great at doing. And the only thing you should be doing when you start a new business is what you do best and what only you can do. So a founder has two responsibilities. One is to do what they do best, right? Whether it's creating something, whether it's producing something, whether it's managing, whatever it is that you do best, you should be doing that. And the second thing that you have to do as a founder is play the role of the founder. And what I mean by that is be there to lead your teams, be there to interact with clients at the highest level, be there to represent the company in a way that only the founder can do.
Right.
So if you're photocopying and doing legal contracts and cleaning the office and hiring people and running around, you won't be doing either of those really important things to anything like the level you need to be doing them for your business to be a success. So it means that you have to give away stuff in order to just do what you do best. And why a lot of founders do everything is because it makes them feel safe. Because if I'm doing everything, then I don't really have to do anything well. I know no one would ever use that excuse out loud or even to themselves, but it follows, right? That if I'm so busy photocopying documents and sending stuff out and doing PR and managing the company and bringing in finances, I don't really have to do any of those things really well because I can't. Everyone understands he's too stretched. He's too busy. He's too frenetic. So it's really important to delegate. It's really important to give away possibilities to other people who be really good at managing, organizing, whatever it is you don't do well. They will love those assignments and they will do them differently, possibly from how you will, but they will leave you free to be your superpower strength and to be the founder, which only you can do. And you'll see how transformational that is. Because if you think about a successful founder, I don't know who you come across in your life personally, one-on-one, or maybe you've just seen them on a public stage. They have a certain energy. And it's a little bit like the energy that you were describing you have, Seven, which is the energy to attract. It pulls people in. But you can only transmit that energy of pulling people in from a place of stillness and calm. It's a calm energy. And if you have the energy of, I'm doing the photocopier and the contracts, it's a very frantic energy and it doesn't attract. It actually repels. It repels. So the energy of a leader is one of pulling people in, to support, to take on, to facilitate, so that I can lead. When I'm frantically doing stuff that is saving other people's jobs, I'm not that leader. I'm not that calm leader that I need to be to have a successful company.
Yeah. So as a founder, essentially, you have a job that no one else can do because you literally created it for you. Right? No one else can stand in, but other people can stand in for some of those tasks or roles that you need to play. When you say it like that, it feels a lot simpler, which is great because it often seems like this insurmountable task to bring other people on board to do the things that you want to do. But you're right, it's about safety. It does feel safer to know I'm doing it the way I want it to get done. 100%.
Yes, but then you're not being there to lead and to do the things which haven't yet perhaps presented themselves. You know, there may not be investors lining around the block to meet, but they will be there. And when they are, you need to be ready to meet them. And you won't be if you're busy doing other people's stuff. And I think, you know, particularly now, and you'll understand this from a generational perspective, there are lots of people who really want to do all the things that you're doing now as a generalist, as a specialist. So if you're spending time marketing, there are people out there who want to make a career in marketing by saying, come on board and support me. Maybe it's just an hour a week, or maybe it's just a day a week. But by getting those people to do it, you're giving them an opportunity to learn and grow and become the experts that they want to be in that field. And it's taking weight off your shoulders so you can be lighter and more present.
I love the idea of bringing on younger people to help you with those things. Or it might even be something I found is it might not even necessarily need to be people who are younger, who want to sort of start a career in that area. It could be friends or family who have a skill and they're happy to support you for an hour a week, right? That's actually some of the most impactful that I found, which I think pretty much anyone can relate to, right? We can all ask our friend who's great at writing emails to help me craft a page on my website, or, you know, something simple like that.
100%, because I think we often think that asking people for help is burdening them.
Yeah.
And yet, don't we all love being asked for help, particularly when it's help that I'm really good at giving? Yeah. If somebody asks me for help in my sweet spot that plays to my superpower strength, I feel honored, I feel flattered, I'm delighted to do it. So as human beings, we feel better about ourselves and our lives when we're helping and supporting others. So when you actually ask a family member or a friend or a colleague to step up and do something for you and the business, generally they're delighted, particularly if it's something which they love doing and they're good at.
Yeah. Speaking of being good at what you're doing, this really nicely, I love how this all seems to flow so well tonight. This
You've
really nicely moves
very well, Seven. I'm impressed.
Well, I mean, you make it fairly clear and stand out some of your main points, so it's not too hard on me. Now, you've written a lot, and this is a fairly prevalent part of Standout as well, about how important it is to be a specialist, right? So someone who really owns and defines your own niche. And I wonder if you talk to us a little bit about why it's so important to be that specialist, but also why it's so scary to say, you know, I only do X, Y, or Z, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's scary to think that my market isn't here. It's actually here. When we narrow down who our market is, it seems scary because we're eliminating all those people. If I'm starting up a business which is about pet owners, right? Pet owners feels huge, right? If I narrow it down to dogs, that feels scary because now it's not just pet owners, it's dog owners. Well, what about all those rabbit owners and cat owners and horse owners? Now it's just dogs. And if I then narrow it down to just Chihuahuas, right? That's terrifying because so few people have Chihuahuas. Now my client base is just tiny. And if I then take it one step further and now I just have a business serving owners of wire-haired Chihuahuas, I don't know if they exist, but let's imagine they do, wire-haired Chihuahuas, now it's just so tiny, that market. But the fact is, if you're looking for anything, you're not looking for pets. Like when I was looking for my dogs, I wasn't looking for pets. I didn't go online to search for pets. I didn't go online to search for dogs. I went online to search for King Charles Cavalier Spaniels. So when you define your niche, whatever it is, you make yourself instantly, exponentially more appealing, more attractive to the core client who you want to attract. Right? So if you have a creative business, think about who your core client is. Who's your ideal client? Who were you born to serve? And then serve them really well, instead of serving a bigger audience less well. So I had a client recently who was starting a business, in a consultancy business for women in London. But essentially, her ideal client was Arab women in London. And that's who she was, that's who she served, that was her background, that was who her ideal client was. But she felt it was too scary because how many Arab women are there in London? And there are so many other affluent women in London who would need her products and services. But once she targeted Arab women and only spoke to them, thinking about her ideal client always, the business really took off because we know when we're spoken to, we know when in a message online, in a post, in a video, the person is speaking to us. So how did they know that about me? How did they understand my needs so well? When we're talking to too many people, we can't do that because we can't speak directly to the needs of our core ideal client when we're casting the net too wide. So defining your niche is really important because it allows you to speak directly to your customer. And it allows you to serve them uniquely and craft a product or service which is ideally suited to affluent Arab women in London or the owners of long-haired Chihuahuas. Because when you're speaking to all people, you're not speaking to that very person who you're actually really there to serve. And the other thing is, we like experts, right? Yeah. Whatever we're looking for, we don't want a generalist. We want an expert. We want somebody who's really good at that one thing. So, you're looking for somebody who actually serves the need or that has the product that serves the need that's very, very deep in their experience. You don't want somebody who's going to come and clean your chimney, who cleans barns and cleans, industrial warehouses. You want someone with a specialist in domestic chimneys. Whatever the product or services you're offering, it pays to be very defined, to have a very clear niche so that your company becomes, the company that delivers excellent animated children's games, or, your company becomes the company that makes TV programs for teenagers. When you're too broad and do too many things or purport to do too many things, it gives the sense that you probably do none of them really well. And we go to people who we believe will do it really well because that's what they've done so much of before. And it actually helps you to have more joy in your business because you're doing what you really love. widening your net doesn't serve you, it doesn't serve the client, and it doesn't bring you more business. So defining your niche in a very clear way, which at first will seem scary, I appreciate, but will help you grow your business. It will help you grow trust from your client, and it will help you have more fun because you're actually providing the service that you always wanted to provide, or the product that you always wanted to deliver.
Yeah, it sounds like it really does all come down to trust, right? Trust, the people who are buying from you, their trust, even the trust of buyers, right? Say this is something you briefly mentioned, and you talk about it in Standout as well, is, if I'm a buyer, do I want to buy your company if I don't think you are serving the right people and that you really know what you're doing? It's just trust coming in from all angles, or I should say trust comes in from all angles when you really got this niche, this really defined, communicated niche.
100%. And if you have a very defined niche, it makes you much more attractive as an acquisition, because your chances are you're delivering a product or service to an audience that your buyer doesn't already reach. If you're serving everybody, then your buyer, who generally will be bigger than you, is probably already serving them in some way or form, because if you're serving everybody, they're serving everybody, and they're probably serving that niche. Whereas if you only, serve the needs of Arab women in London, chances are your buyer is not already targeting that very specific niche. And so you become attractive because you are a company that is reaching an audience sector that's possibly hard to target, hard to reach, or an audience sector that they haven't yet penetrated. And so when you have a very defined proposition, it makes you ultimately more attractive to a buyer of your business, as well as, in the short term, like you said, much more trusted by your customer.
I love, I always find it fascinating how much trust permeates its way into building and maintaining a really strong business in any sector. And the creative sector seems to rely on that even more, which I find really fascinating. Now, we've talked a lot, to move on to my next question, we've talked a lot about clients, right? We've kind of thrown the word clients around a lot. You talk about having fewer clients as opposed to having more clients, right? So in other words, kind of having as few as possible in a way. Now, when you're launching a business, it can feel like you can never have too many clients, right? You can never have enough. And you disagree with that, right? I know you disagree with that, and you talk about it in Standout. And it's the reason I find it so fascinating is because it's always been one of my struggles, right? I want to be, there's something in my brain that says service as many people as possible, right? Why do you believe that it's better to have fewer clients rather than more?
Well, first of all, it's probably useful to define what I mean in this context by clients. So okay. If, for instance, you are TV producer, something I know a lot about from my past history. If you're a TV producer, I'm not talking about the people who are watching your programs at home. I'm not talking about the people who are downloading your programs at home. I'm talking about the original client, the Netflix, the Amazon Prime, the Channel 4, who commissioned the program from you. And I'm not even talking about them, the business, I'm talking about the person there who commissioned it. So, you can never have too many end users who want to use your product or services. That's always a good thing because they're the consumers. But the clients, that's the people who order your products or services. You should only have as many as you can service their needs in a way that they feel like Seven is my preferred supplier. And more importantly, I am Seven's preferred client. Because when a client feels like you are serving them, putting their needs as a buyer, as a client, ahead of other people's, they feel special, and a bond of trust starts to form. When a client or a buyer feels like Seven has so many buyers, so many clients that he barely seems to remember my name, let alone remember what I said to him the last time when we met, let alone actually service my needs, then you've lost their trust, you've lost that sense of specialness. I'll give you an example. I was coaching somebody not that long ago who'd left a quite powerful position within a TV broadcaster. And so they had quite a lot of contacts within the broadcast industry from people who they'd worked with along the way up, who were now in a position to buy from them. People who liked them and trusted them. But they probably had about 20 people who were on their hit list of, these will be my clients when I start my own production company, right?
Yeah.
And this was before they came to me, by the way, so I take no responsibility. But they went out, they started their business, and they started pitching to all 20 buyers. And what happened was, they were really just a sole trader to begin with in their business. You know, it was basically them and a head of production and a researcher. There wasn't a big number of executives or producers to go pitch to those 20 people. Mm-hmm. So they'd go and see their friends and trusted colleagues one at a time. They'd find out what they needed. They'd then write back to them, maybe with a couple of ideas. But they could only do that, what I've just described. In other words, meet them, come back with a couple of ideas, and move on to the next person, because they had 20 people on their list. And so what happened was, these 20 potentially big, valuable clients, all of them felt underserved, ignored. They felt like this person who they'd hoped would become a key supplier had other, more important, better fish to fry. And it really wasn't that he did. It was just that he had too many people to actually service any of their needs really well. And what a client wants and needs, because it's always a person, right? We think of, you know, I ask clients often to say, well, who are your clients? And they'll say, well, you know, it's BBC Studios, or it's Netflix, or it's Prime Video, or whoever it might be, Waterstones. But that's not their client. Their client is actually the person within that company who orders from them, the person within that company who they know and trust. And what people like is to be important, to be taken care of, to be trusted. Especially when you're starting a new business, your clients want to feel like they are the most important client you have. And if they feel that, they may well try and be helpful, order from you, stay in communication. If they feel like, oh, you'll be fine without me, you've got a dozen clients and you haven't even really got back to me since last time, they will ignore you and they won't take care of you and they won't support you and they won't feel like you're serving them. So once you grow your business, you can have 10 sevens out there, and each of your sevens is confusing with your name. At the number of times I'm speaking to 7 at 7 or 7 at 6. But when you have 10 sevens, 10 Remys, each of them can have 3 or 4 clients whose needs they really serve. But you can't have 10 yourself, because it will run you ragged and everyone will feel ignored. So it's better to just have 3, be in regular contact, speak to them every week, talk to them about their interests, their passions, their life, other things apart from the product or service that you're offering. Congratulate them on their achievements, their successes inside and outside of work. Stay in communication. Be a source of information and fun and great energy with that person, and become friends with them and get to know them and have them get to know you. And you can't fake it. If you don't like them and they don't like you, move on to a different client. But if it feels like there's a bond there, there's something worth exploring, really give it a lot of energy and time and focus. And if they say, oh, I might be interested in something like this, give them 10 somethings like this. Make sure that you're really servicing their needs. Don't ever just move on when they say no, but take each no to be an invitation to the next yes. And that will be much more productive. So yes, you can see it's something I care quite a lot about. Having few clients is a great way to start your business.
I find it fascinating how so many of these secrets you're sharing with us tonight cover trust and cover where do I give my energy, right? Where do I place that energy? I find it fascinating how just a couple of core concepts can be applied in so many different ways and therefore have such a transformation. Now, I'm aware of our time. We've only got a little bit of time left, but I really want to ask you my final question before we finish off. We'll try to speed through it, hopefully. Now, this is kind of about, again, thinking about yourself a little bit as a founder. It can be really exciting when I'm about to launch my product, right? It could be a new film. It could be a product line, right? A new fashion line. It could be a new online course like Standout. A shameless little plug there, right? It could be anything you're about to drop. Now, you've written about how it can be a little bit dangerous for founders to give too much focus towards any one of those projects, right? Any one project you're about to drop. Now, why is that? Why is that a dangerous thing to focus on too much?
Well, I think all founders come from somewhere else. You weren't just born a founder. You don't become a founder at age 7. So all founders were, before they were founders, they were creators, they were generators, they were producers, they were managers. They were working in an environment where projects were everything, because they were running projects, right? Before you're a founder, you are a producer or a director or a designer or a creative. In my sector, you're a publisher. You might be doing any number of things in the creative sector in which you were defined by your projects. Right. And so it's natural to then go into the world of entrepreneurship and become a founder, still focused on projects. Projects are exciting, projects are sexy, projects bring money in, projects have clients attached. Projects are where the energy is. And it's really easy to forget that your biggest project when you're a founder is the company that you founded. Not the projects that it's running, but the company itself. It's like, before you were thinking about eggs. Now there's a nest. If the nest isn't safe, if the nest isn't healthy, if the nest doesn't attract the right kind of birds that lay, you've got nothing. So instead of being defined by projects, I kind of like the story of the goose who laid the golden egg, because I think it illustrates so well how we forget that the goose is the most important thing, not the golden egg. If you kill the goose, there are no golden eggs. So if you're a founder who has 3 really successful projects, but a company that is dwindling and dying because it's not profitable, because it doesn't retain talent, because it hasn't saved enough overhead recovery, because it's not doing well in itself, you can have 3 great projects and no company.
Yeah.
And if you've got no company, then why be a founder? You're not becoming a founder to just create projects. You'll become a founder to grow a company. And to grow a company takes focus and love and commitment and energy to the company itself. And so often I ask successful founders, what do you think your company's biggest asset is? And do you know what they say? They very often, nearly always, list the content, the intellectual property, the library, the assets within the business. And what they forget is that any successful company's biggest asset is the founder. Because the founder is the goose that lays the golden egg. And so while you're looking after your staff, your team, the well-being and morale of the people who work for you, also look after your own well-being, look after your own health, make sure you are rested and vital and have vacations. Because if you kill your own golden goose, who is you, there won't be any more golden eggs to be laid. You have to take care of yourself and the business, because the business itself is the only thing that is valued at exit, and you are the only thing that delivers that exit. So you and the business are more valuable, more important than any projects. And if there's a project that's going to be detrimental to your health or well-being, or detrimental to the health or financial health or well-being of your business, say no. Don't take on projects that are not going to be good for you or the business.
I have so many things I want to ask you to expand on that, but we don't have the time, unfortunately. Maybe in a future live stream. We are just about at our hour. Remy, where can people kind of find more about you and also find Standout? We've got at the bottom there, you can register at creative-startups.com. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
That's a great place to start, because there's a link to my coaching website, but mainly details about Standout, where you can register for a program that will deliver 9 modules that really take you through all the distinctions of successful founders and support you in having a successful company. So whether you've just started a company or just thinking about starting a company in the creative sector, I hope you find Standout really useful, and that's where you can find it. So I look forward to seeing everyone there.
Perfect. Well, that brings us to the end. I think that's a great place to leave off and to round off. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us tonight, and to everyone who's watching this afterwards as well. And I hope you found it all very, very useful. Thank you, Remy, for joining me on here tonight.
Thank you so much, Seven.
Great. Have a good one. Good night.